Welcome, everybody, to today's talk. Good to see you back. This channel is all about trauma, living lives trauma-free, and I thought I would focus my talk today on 3 steps you can do right now, today, to help you manage the emotional, damaging, long-term effects of complex trauma. So these are 3 things that you can do now to help you manage. Let me just turn my screen around a little bit so it's not so distracting. I am at home. It is the evening. The light's not too great, so I apologize. But hey, I wanted to do more raw videos. So here we are, raw. Who knows what's going to happen? Yeah, so 3 steps you can do now to help you manage the emotional distress that you can experience as a side effects of living with and managing complex trauma in your life. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself, just to set the scene so you know what my experience is. I was removed into local authority care, that's into a children's home at the age of 2. My father was an alcoholic. He used to have this really bad habit of leaving me around different locations. He'd go and get pissed, and then he would forget that he'd taken me with him. He would leave me in the pub, leave me in the market, wherever. So I was taken into local authority care. I was institutionalized in the care system for 13 years. Now, during that time, as you can imagine, it wasn't the best experience. So I experienced neglect, abandonment, sexual abuse. I was locked in a cupboard. I was drugged. I had over 30 foster placements, an adoption breakdown, and was thrown into the big wide world at 15 to fend and cope for myself. So I haven't had the best upbringing, let's put it that way. And of course, that has left a significant scar on the way that I have been able to cope during my life. And I think what's interesting for me is that given the amount of trauma that I have experienced, is that I had very little mental health input. Actually, if anything, I didn't have any mental health input at all. It wasn't until I ended up with extreme anxiety and a couple of depressive episodes did I actually have some mental health input. But it wasn't the best mental health input. You know, they weren't keen on doing a diagnosis. They weren't keen on referring services. So I've had to live with these challenges, the after effects of all this horrendous childhood complexity, trauma, to go it alone, to find my own path, I guess you could say. So I wrote a book called Be More Wolf, Breaking the Trauma Cycle. So I'm going to refer to that book. And I'm an Amazon #1 bestseller twice. I also spent 20 years working in social services, done loads of qualifications, and decided to leave because I was experiencing some ongoing dyslexia discrimination. So left. So I have a rotten background, I guess you could say. That's the best way to describe it. And unfortunately, I'm a believer that trauma breeds more trauma, a bit like stress. Stress breeds more stress, anxiety breeds more anxiety. If it is not managed, if you don't know how to navigate the complexity of your mind and what it is that you are experiencing. But the good news is that you absolutely can, and I am living proof of that. So I thought it would be helpful to share with you 3 things that I do to help me navigate the complexity of the emotional distress that I can sometimes find myself in. Now, I have to say that because after writing the book was one of the best things I did, that was therapy on a whole new level, which I wasn't expecting. So I don't fall into these emotional triggers as much as I used to. The emotional vortex that you can get stuck into. So I don't experience these to the same degree. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to share 3 things that you can do that will help you navigate the complexity of dealing with complex trauma. Okay, so I have told you a little bit about myself, what my upbringing is. It's obviously much more complicated than that, but that is just a little flavor. But as I said, I never had a diagnosis, which is just absolutely crazy considering how much I have been through, even as a child within the care system. And one of the damaging emotional effects of that was that I found it when I was growing up, when I was shoved out into the big wide world at 15 and I was growing up, I found it very difficult to communicate with people. I found it very difficult to talk to people, to hold a conversation, to trust people. I constantly lived in fear of abandonment, fear that they were going to hurt me, fear that I was going to be abused. That's my cat running around, or kitten, I should say, running around the apartment doing the mad 5 minutes, as they do. Yeah, fear of people. I didn't want to be near people. I didn't want them to talk to me. I had a real chip on my shoulder. I was very defensive. Anyone that would get close to me, I would push them away. And I touched on this a bit earlier on, that I believe trauma breeds more trauma. If the trauma that you have experienced within your life isn't healed, you haven't spent time reframing it and understanding it from a new perspective, so you're holding on to the raw energy and the emotion of it in the brain and the body, is that patterns will return and they will show up in different ways throughout your life. It's just a different version of what it is that my cat's climbing up the mosquito net. That's what that noise is, just in case you were wondering. You just act it out in lots of different ways. The brain holds such a memory of the trauma it is that you've experienced, that it ends up putting you back into similar situations unconsciously from deep in the subconscious, because your brain is trying to it's trying to find the answer to the question, even though you don't know what it is. It's trying to find the answer to the question. And it puts you in similar situations where it thinks you're going to get the answer to the question. But actually, you're never going to be able to get the answer to the question, because the answer to that question actually is a conscious piece of work. And that is about not delving deep into the trauma, but it is about looking at what's showing up in your life now, what's getting in your way now, what's causing havoc, what's sabotaging your success now, and looking at that and how that's been shaped, and then reframing it. And there's a process I take people through, reframing it, looking at it from a fresh and new perspective. When you start doing that, the brain starts to understand, it starts to organize, it starts to release the energy, the grip, the emotional grip that trauma has on you starts to reduce, because the brain is able to, I think the best way to describe it is to be able to file that lived experience in the right place. So you are dealing with it. You're dealing with the issues that it's created rather than dealing with the trauma itself, by connecting the dots between experiences. Sorry, I suspect that's a bit complicated, but if it is, buy the book, as it's very clear in the book. So, what have I got here? that's the other thing I need to say is that trying to deal with trauma head on is going to be a recipe for disaster, because the human psyche is very cleverly designed to create resistance, to create emotional blocks. And what will happen is that you will move into a place of such resistance that you won't want to look at it. You won't want to get a new sense of what's happening, because it's too emotionally painful. The brain and the body doesn't want to be put in a situation where it's going to experience pain. So it's going to do its best to steer you away from actually addressing what it is that you need to be taking a closer look at. So as I said, the way to do that is to look at the symptoms of, rather than actually looking at the trauma itself as a starting point, and then you can start to connect the dots. But let's talk about what you can do now, because when you are in emotional distress, hey, Pete, how are you? Are you still in Bangkok? Oh, I'm going to get distracted now. And I hear you're married. Awesome. Hopefully you're coming to Koh Chang soon. That would be great. Yeah, so now I've completely lost my train of thought. Where was I? Help. I've completely forgotten. Oh, just don't fight trauma head on. Don't fight those emotional difficulties, those lived experiences it is that you've had head on. So don't go head on into the issue. You just want to deal with what's showing up in everyday life now. What is sabotaging your success? What's getting in your way? What's making you unhappy? What's making you feel uncomfortable? What's making you a bit anxious? What's making you angry? You want to deal with those types of symptoms. Why am I not getting a job promotion? Whatever is showing up in your life that you don't understand, or it's created a block of some kind, means that there's something playing out in your subconscious. So you're not consciously aware of it, but it's held in your subconscious, and it's what's happening is the brain is working hard just to keep you out of certain scenarios to keep you safe. So what did I want to do? I wanted to refer to my book and just to talk about the traumatized mind. So when you experience one traumatic event or two traumatic events, or you've witnessed something and that's caused trauma, what happens is that the brain takes an imprint of what it is that you have experienced. And when trauma is out of control and it's impacting your life today, what happens is so just imagine this is a brain. That's your brain, and that's a healthy brain. What happens is trauma creates this, just imagine this is trauma and it's a cloud. When it's out of control, it will consume the whole brain. What we want to do is work at shrinking it so it's like the size of a pea. So your lived experience is still there. It's still held in the memory, but you don't hold any emotional attachment to it. You understand it in the here and now rather than still being traumatized from the past. So what happens is that this is the traumatized mind, where you are just living in the past, you're fearful, you become emotionally triggered, you're unhappy, you find yourself a little bit out of control sometimes. This is when the trauma is basically taken over. What we want to do is work on shrinking it so it's a more healthy size. It hasn't completely disappeared, but it's a healthier size for you to be able to manage your life, manage your mental health more consciously. So it's healthier, basically. So you have healthier mental health. So really, the first thing is about uncovering what's playing havoc in your life now. What I wanted to do was just set the scene a little bit before I give you the three things that you can do to actually manage your mental health now, today. But I just want to set the scene and give you a little bit of my theory. So hopefully you've got a bit more of a grounding in what it is and why I'm saying to focus on the next three things. But the first thing you need to do is absolutely to uncover what is playing havoc in your life. And that it really is about stepping up, taking personal responsibility and making a conscious decision to say, right, I'm going to look at my life and what's happening. It's like putting your life under a microscope. You're going to look at what's happening and you're going to take responsibility for it. I'll show you in a second how exactly you can do that. The second thing you need to do is to be able to get under the skin of the behavior it is that you find yourself stuck in. So what is keeping you unhappy? You need to get underneath why that is. And thirdly, what you need to do is to start learning to take inspired action, because that inspired action will take you in a completely new direction. It will open the door to possibilities and opportunities and new learnings. So, traumatized mind. What we want to do is shrink the level of trauma it is that you are experiencing, which basically shows up in your behavior, how you're behaving, how you're acting. It shows up in emotional blocks that are keeping you stuck. You want to uncover what's playing havoc in your life. You want to get under the skin of what that is, and then you want to take inspired action. Okay, those three steps are simplified. It is more complicated than that. But ultimately, in a nutshell, that's what it is that you want to do. Because of the level of trauma I experienced, I didn't even realize I was doing this. But what I would do is I spent a great deal of time, a lot of time, winding myself up. So I would just be repeatedly in my head, what if this? What if that? I can't do that. I can't do this. So I'd be having this conversation in my head about what I could do, what I couldn't do. And all that did was it fed into creating anxiety. It fed into creating panic attacks. It fed into creating depression, because I was having this negative dialogue going on in my head that was sabotaging my success. What it did is it meant that I was held a victim to the trauma it is that I had experienced. So I think it's a really good thing to do and this isn't one of the three things, but just thinking about it as I'm talking, is one of the good things to do is to keep a close eye on what it is that you are saying to yourself during the day. Do you find yourself winding yourself up? You're having a conversation on repeat that actually you don't know the answer to the questions to. Because I didn't know the answer to the questions to most of the things I used to say to myself, but I was quite happy to keep myself in this emotional distress, turmoil, this scenario that was just playing out on a loop and keeping me stuck. So one of the things you could really do to really help you to manage any trauma is to just start making a note, hold a diary, make a note, and see what it is that you are saying to yourself that's winding yourself up. If you're saying things and you don't have answers to the questions, the next three things I'm going to ask you to do will help you manage your emotional state better. She says, where have I put them? Okay, what do I have? Winding myself up, yes. Asking myself questions. What if this? What if that? Never-ending loop, which created stress, anxiety, depression, poor mental health, and emotional well-being. Okay, so I've just mentioned that it would be helpful for you to write down. I think my internet is dropping out. I'm not sure, but I'm going to keep going. What would be useful for you to do is to write down if you can see yourself winding yourself up. Because if you catch yourself winding yourself up and you can stop it, honestly, it will free up a lot of mental energy, which is great, which is exactly what you want. It will mean that you are moving away from an unhealthy mindset and becoming much more conscious of your thoughts, and can deal with situations and people much better. You won't become so emotionally triggered. But also what I want you to do is to bring conscious awareness to what... I've got to refer to my own book. To bring conscious awareness to the havoc that is playing out in your life. So one way to do this is to bring conscious attention to what it is that you're doing. So at the end of the day, I want you to write out 3 things under 5 headings, because this is going to show you exactly where the havoc, where you're unhappy, is playing out in your life. This is where the symptoms of trauma will show up, and it will show you what you can look at first. So you want to write 3 things that are keeping you in flow, 3 things that are keeping you unhappy, 3 things you love doing. That's just one heading, by the way. So what keeps you in flow? 3 things. Second heading, what takes you out of flow? What makes you unhappy? 3 things. Now, don't get into the detail. Just write down 3 things that make you happy, 3 things that are happening during the day that make you unhappy. Number 3, you want to write out what is getting in your way. 3 things, what's getting in your way. 3 things that you could do to put your best foot forward, and 3 things that you can acknowledge that you have done well during the day. Now, what I don't want you to do is to write this all down every day for 5 days and then think you've got to solve everything. You haven't. What you're doing is you're helping your brain to start to organize and help you to stop winding yourself up during the day, because you're making a conscious effort to make an appointment with yourself to sit down. This will take you just a couple of minutes. 3 things that make you happy, 3 things that make you unhappy. What can you do to get out of your own way? What can you do to put your best foot forward? And 3 things that you can acknowledge that you have done throughout the day. Now, some people will have loads of stuff and they will put loads of stuff down. Some people will have nothing. Either is fine. What it's doing is it's showing you a very clear picture of what is going on in your life. Then at the end of the week, what you do is you take a look at that sheet of paper, and you will see a very clear pattern of what's going on in your life. So this is like the foundation of everything that I do. This is like the building block of everything I do, because it gives you a very clear insight as to what is going on in your life, and it helps the brain to start to process what's going on and how it can best help you manage some of the situations it is that you find yourself in. And there'll be some things on here that on this list that you are not aware of that are playing out that you need to take a look at. But the 3 things that you can do the 3 steps that you can do to help you manage your emotional well-being, because of the devastating and complex impact that trauma has in our lives, to help you to be able to manage your mental health. Your emotional health, I think, is the best. If we're going to take it down another layer, we're really talking about emotional health. So step 1 is to acknowledge and take responsibility, to step forward, to put a plan in place, to take action. So you could do one of these two things, but I really want to encourage you to do the 5-step journal. How are you winding yourself up? Make a note of how you're winding yourself up during the day. What's going on? You want to do your journal, inflow, out of flow. What can you do to get out of your own way? What can you do to put your best foot forward? What can you write down to acknowledge the things that you have achieved during the day? So step 1 is about acknowledgement. It's about taking personal responsibility. It's about stepping forward. Step 2 is about creating a habit. So the 5-step journal, perfect. That is a new habit that you can do easily, and it will help you significantly. Step 3, and that is comes back to the acknowledge when you are talking negatively to yourself. Acknowledge when you are winding yourself up. Catch yourself in the moment and flip it on its head and talk to yourself with nothing but love, compassion, and forgiveness. Don't allow yourself to sabotage how you are feeling emotionally. It is very, very easy to talk to yourself negatively because you've been doing it for such a long time. In fact, you've been doing it for so long that you could probably earn a distinction in negative self-talk about yourself and others. So, step 1, acknowledge, take responsibility for how you are feeling. It's about stepping forward and becoming consciously awake of what is going on and managing your emotional state. Step 2 is about creating a habit. It's about you taking personal responsibility for starting to learn to manage the emotions it is that you are experiencing. And step 3, only talk to yourself with love and compassion. That's a conscious decision. You have a choice how you speak to yourself. And if you say to yourself, I am not doing this anymore, I'm not playing this game anymore, and you start to turn it on its head, you will see a significant difference in your emotional and mental well-being. So let me know how you get on. Was that helpful? Have you got any questions? I have found these 3 things to really help, to take responsibility for what I'm saying to myself and not to tolerate any stinking thinking, I call it. To take inspired action, which means that I'm fully aware of what is playing out in my head. What is it that I'm thinking and feeling? And then making a decision on what it is that I want to do as a consequence of that. And thirdly, creating the routine it is to help me manage my thoughts and to stop me from winding myself up, because winding myself up is what has created anxiety and depression and has made me really ill. It's just I haven't known that that is what I've been doing. So let me know how you get on. As I said, the book is on Amazon. You can pick it up. And it's called Be More Wolf, A Survivor's Story, Breaking the Trauma Cycle. And within there, I share with you the 4 repeatable steps to recover and heal trauma. This book is brilliant also for therapists. I'm getting a lot of feedback from therapists saying that it's on point, it's really helpful, that they can see their clients in my story and what it is that I've been sharing and how it can help them to navigate the complexity of trauma. The beauty of this book is that the power lies within you, not your therapist, but within you. It's about you taking responsibility. Your therapist will help, of course they will, but it's about you taking responsibility for understanding your emotional state, understanding the rawness of your emotions and how you're seeing the world, how you can change how you see the world, and how you're interacting with people. Yeah, it's quite a gift to me. So if it's a gift to me, I hope it is a gift to you. If you like what I had to say, please do subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do share on social media. There may be somebody out there in your network who is really struggling right now with their emotional and mental health. This could really, really help them on their journey to recovery and healing. There was something that I wanted to close with, and that is that your trauma does not define who you are. I think we think it does, but actually it doesn't. And your time is absolutely now. If you have stayed with me until the end of this video, just know that your time is absolutely now. Until tomorrow, lovelies, I will catch up with you tomorrow. But questions below, pop them below and I will answer them for you. But I wish you every best on your trauma recovery and healing journey.